Hi everybody, it's Catherine and I'm with Claire and we're going to talk about A Clash of Kings. This is our second installment. We're working all the way from Arya 2 to the end of Davos 1. And I have to say, I was just saying to Claire before we started, I think this is my favourite collection of chapters that we've done ever. I really liked every single chapter here, and even the cat chapter, So before we start, I'll tell you that next week we're going to be looking at chapter 11 to chapter 16, which is Theon 1 to Bran 2. So we finally get a Theon chapter, and we finally get a Dany chapter somewhere in there too. So Claire, how did you get on with this week?
Yes, I enjoyed this group of chapters, definitely. There's a couple of chapters that were quite short for me. I didn't, not a huge amount, but the last one, I think I'll probably be fairly quiet until we get to the last chapter, the Davos chapter, where I just basically fell down a bit of a rabbit hole. And I was saying to Kat before we started, I've even been marking in the books, and I've pulled out A World of Ice and Fire to check a few things. So the beginnings of maybe a kind of new theory for me. So we'll see. We'll see what you think. We'll see what you think.
And this is unusual for you to actually mark in the book, right?
Oh, absolutely. I still haven't done that.
This is important, people.
I've used a Post-it note, but it's I've marked where it is. Yeah.
Whereas I'm a proper wreck my book kind of person. No. My books are anyway, we have 2 Arya chapters this week, and Arya, like you said last week, is kind of shaping up to be our Ned of A Clash of Kings, I feel.
Yeah.
And I actually forgot that. I was saying it to Claire. I actually forgot that we wouldn't see Dany for a while. She's almost like Sansa in that sense. Sansa was our last character. Get a POV in a Game of Thrones, a good bit into it. So yeah, we start off with Arya, and this is Arya 2. She's still traveling north with all of the brothers and Yoren. I feel like in Arya 2 and Arya 3, we are getting a very clear picture. Oh, hi, Sunny. We're getting a very clear picture of what it's like to be a small folk, or to be part of the small folk in this part of the world, and it's pretty shit. It's been worse in Arya 3, which we can talk more about that in Arya 3. But they have this mad woman with hollowed eyes and bloody feet screaming at them that they'll kill them. Basically, turn back. They're coming. That's just like, what's going on here? And Arya, I guess the biggest thing that happens, I mean, there's a couple of things here with Arya. She builds up more of a relationship with Jaqen, and she is also getting more used to violence and suffering and death and grottiness. I think this chapter as well, where she can't take a bath, even though she stinks. But Prayed, do you say Prayed? I think it's Prayed. Is coughing all through the night until he isn't, and he's died in the middle of the night. So there's sickness here as well, and I think we learn in the next chapter, maybe it's this one. I get them mixed up now, the 2 Arya chapters. Yoren hasn't lost anybody on a journey in 10 years or something like that. He hasn't had anyone die, or hasn't had to kill anybody.
That's in the next one.
In the next one, yeah. So it's kind of in the next one as well, like just the condition of this group, it gets worse. But Jack, there's a couple of things. Arya, standing up for the wolves. She doesn't believe any of the rumors about wolves eating babies. And 2 things that Jaqen says to her. I mean, I feel like everything Jaqen says is weighted anyway and loaded with connotations. But he says a man must have some name when he's talking about Biter, because they call it the guy Biter. And he says to her, a boy has more courage than sense, which is Arya's story. That'll be on her tombstone. So she's about to fight with Gendry when the gold cloaks turn up, and she thinks it's for her, but it's actually they're looking for Gendry, and Yoren refuses to give them Gendry. And interestingly, the gold cloaks they recognize that she's a girl straight away. One of the gold cooks says that she is a girl. So interestingly, nobody else picks up on that. And there's already this kind of great comradeship among this little group of kind of outlaws. And I guess that's why they don't, I don't know, I guess that's why they don't sail to the north. I guess one of the things is that journey brings them together as they're going north. I guess that's kind of part of the initiation. Yeah. I guess, I don't know. But, and Yoren at the end of the chapter kind of foreshadows his own death as well, when he says that they'll have to come and take his head or something like that. That he'll have. But other than that, I didn't get much from it apart from, you know, the comradeship that's building up and the relationship that's definitely building up with Jaqen and Arya.
I think I do think that we get a really good introduction into the kind of landscape of Westeros and the small folk. So we get the sense that the King's Road is very busy. There's lots of traffic up and down, mainly moving south. So there's that general foreboding sense of like people are traveling in one direction, Arya's traveling in possibly the opposite direction. There seems to be, there's mention of the wolves quite a bit in this chapter, and I think in other chapters, and they do seem to centre around the Riverlands and the God's Eye. So that area, the Riverlands, the God's Eye, Harrenhal, again, is mentioned a couple of times in this chapter and in the next couple of chapters. Actually, Tyrion, there's a conversation. Harrenhal crops up quite a bit in this group of chapters. there are a couple of prophetic things in this chapter where Arya says that she's tired of running, and it's quite sad, because we know that from this point onwards, that's all she's ever going to be doing until where we're at currently in the books, which is the end of I was going to say Winds of Winter, as if Dance with Dragons. And if you've read the Mercy chapter, the pre-release chapter for the next book, she's always on the run, and it is just quite sad that already at this point, even in the early stages of the story, she seems quite exhausted by it. Interesting that the conversations that we've had previously about who sent Gendry away. So we find out in these chapters that it was Varys who spirited him away, but it's Cersei who wants him back. So why does she want why is this happening? Why did she send basically the City Watch? It's not just a contingent of a kind of ragbag of sellswords to go and find him. She's sending numbers from the capital when she's already panicking about the fact that she wants her father to come and bring more numbers. So is this Cersei being strategically just, I don't know, messed up like she tends to be, or does she fear his claim because he is trueborn? And we've the conversations that we've had before about that. So that's quite interesting. How does Cersei know that he's gone?
That he even exists?
Well, I think she gave birth to him, so she knows.
Oh no, okay, yeah, with that theory, yes, obviously,
yes. But if that's not,
I still buy that theory for sure.
Yeah.
But no, my first question when I realized I'm probably wrong about the fact that she kind of she kind of pushes him to be sent with Yoren, that is a Varys plan, and Varys kind of admits that to Tyrion later. But my other question is, how does she know who, if she isn't his mother, how does she know who he is? Like, how does she know he's a bastard?
Yeah, she will have been fed that information from
Littlefinger
or a number. I mean, he was an apprentice at one of the prominent armourers in the capital, and he physically looks exactly the spit of Robert. So it wouldn't surprise me if there weren't rumours around the sort of inns and the wine taps in Flea Bottom and what have you. I also think, I mean, if you think about it, the situation that Cersei's in, she's got illegitimate children by incest with her twin brother. If she, so she's already going to be paranoid about claim to the throne and legitimacy. That's all already going to be something that makes her anxious. What's going to make her even more anxious is that there are, and she knows this from the foreshadowing of Maggie the Frog, but she knows that there are 16 bastards out there that Robert's had, and one of them may have a fairly decent claim to the throne, particularly as we see later on if there's rumors of her children not being legitimate. So it makes sense that she wants to either have him killed or whatever, but it just seems very over the top that she sent the gold cloaks. And
yes,
yeah, there's something about that, I think.
Also, what is the jurisdiction of the city guard? Like, they're not a royal guard, are they? They're city guards, so shouldn't they be the people?
Yeah, you would think that she'd send Lannister guards, if anyone.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But yeah, no, it's a bit strange. Especially when things are so dangerous at the moment. To be sending men away with refugees just flooding the city.
She's already, she's complaining about the lack of numbers, which is why she wants her father back in King's Landing. So either there's more to this with Gendry specifically, or like I believe that this is actually her son. That this is her firstborn son with Robert.
Is it confirmed that Cersei is behind? This is probably a really stupid answer. People are probably screaming at me right now. Is it confirmed that she is behind the killing of the bastards? Or is there a question as to whether that's Joffrey's work?
I think this is where there's a mix-up between the book and the TV show, because in the TV show, I believe, from what I can remember, they made it quite clear that it was all Cersei was behind it all. In the books, I think they might allude to it being Joffrey. But again, it's that whether it's Joffrey or Cersei, it's the fear of the claim.
I think Cersei. See, the thing is, we can buy it because she kills the twins at Casterly Rock. But my thing with it being Cersei, I'll come back to it with the Tyrion chapter. The Jaina Slint problem that Tyrion is having, or which he solves. That's making me wonder if it's oh, hi, the goodbye girl, how are you? Nice to see you. Yeah, that's making me wonder if it is Cersei or Joffrey. And also, why not just kill Gendry straight away? Why bring him back alive? That's something I don't really understand. But yeah, it doesn't fall into my theory from last week, so we can ignore that one. So yeah, that's Arya 2, and then we're on to Jon 6. And Claire, I think you should probably start off with Jon 6, because I know Jon 6 probably introduces favorite characteristics of Sam. I'm guessing, right?
I'm not sure.
with the library and his curiosity and what information Sam may find.
Yes, yeah. So there's lots of, well, this in this chapter, just to set the scene, Jon and Sam are in the library and they make the way to where Mormont is. What he's instructed Sam to find some maps that will assist them when they go on their journey beyond the wall. So Sam talks about the importance of the books and how, but there's this sense of urgency of the books are crumbling and we don't know how. We get a sense that these are ancient books, but also how far back does it go? How many times have they been copied? How much of the Meister's influence has been there to make any changes to the text that was there originally? And what was there? But who started this? Who was responsible? and under what jurisdiction for making these records and reports. We know that, for example, the first men, who were the first human inhabitants of Westeros, didn't communicate by writing things down. It was all on runes and runestones. But these books go way back. So we start to begin to get an idea of the history of these scrolls that have come from old Valyria. And it's just, this is Sam's world. It's interesting again that people are still making comments on the comet and what that might be. In this chapter, it's seen as Mormont's torch, which is lighting the way again on this mission beyond the wall. But there is one passage here that I want to point out that links to the Davos chapter later on, but I'm going to mention it now. So it's when Sam and Jon are on their way to Mormont's room, and it's an observation about the wall. So bearing in mind that in this universe, this massive structure, this huge ice structure, is the biggest ice structure that we've got in this world. It's massive. It's 700 feet tall. It's 300 feet wide. And let me see if I can find it here. Yes, Sam squinted up at the wall. It loomed above them, an icy cliff of 700 feet high. Sometimes it seemed to Jon almost a living thing with moods of its own. The colour of the ice was wont to change with every shift of the light. Now it was the deep blue of the frozen rivers, now a dirty white of old snow. When a cloud passed before the sun, it darkened to a pale grey of pitted stone. It's just that what jumped out at me was that the colour of the ice changed through every shift of the light. What else does that remind you of?
Multi-chrome polishes.
Yeah. Rainbow flakies. So it is. So we've got this massive, potentially ice magical structure in this universe. And it's being described, and this isn't the only time it's been described as these shafts of light, almost like rainbow, different colours of light that move through the wall. There's almost a sense that it's kind of alive. There are different moods to the wall. It weeps sometimes, but that image of that shaft of light going through the ice and producing this like spectrum of a rainbow of different light, does it remind you of anything else that we have in this story?
The others, their armor.
What it reminds me of,
right?
And I'll come back to this, it reminds me of the crystals that are part of the faith of the Seven.
Okay.
Like when Sansa walks into the Sept of Baelor, it's massive, and you've got all the crystals and the light reflecting through the crystals. And if you are part of the faith, you have, you wear a crystal. The High Septon has basically a crown made of crystals. Mm-hmm. So this crystal is very symbolic of the faith of the Seven. And you could say, well, it's because of the seven colours of the rainbow represents the seven gods of the faith. I don't think it does. I think, and we'll come back to this I'll come back to this when we get to the Davos chapter. I believe that the crystals are linked to the wall, to the magic that's in the wall, and what they're representing is not the faith of the Seven, but little like iconic chips of ice of the wall. And this is what basically I feel that an entire religion has been duped into worshipping a set of gods or God that they don't realize. Wouldn't that be just George R.R. Martin?
Yes.
To be able to write an entire religion that ultimately at the end of it we find out that this entire religion is just a fabricated way of the first men being able to have some continuity in the minds of like modern day men. So I will get to that. I'll get to that later. I think it links to what we see when we see the the relics, the religious icons being burned in the Davos chapter. But I think that the first men I think they were very clever, and they knew they were being defeated, and they did something to the Andals that affected this, how we see. And I think when the phrase old gods and the new, I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same thing.
That's really interesting, because I want to hear more about that when we get to Davos for sure, because I think it's one of the most it is the most religious chapter we've had so far, the Davos one. I'm really interested in the Valyrian scrolls and how they got there. I assume is it Daenerys, another Daenerys, Queen Daenerys? Did she bring them, I wonder?
Yeah, possibly. There was a Valyrian queen that because there is
really interested in.
I'm just looking at my map up on the wall. There is a castle called Queen's Guard, I think, is it? That was named after her. Was it Queen Alice?
Queen's Tower? Something like that.
Yeah.
I said John 6, by the way. It's chapter 6. It's John 1. I'm such an idiot. I feel like John's chapter is the most. It felt like I forgot this was the first John chapter, actually. It felt like John's story just continued very seamlessly from Game of Thrones. The Goodbye Girl in the chat is talking about the Derry Girls, which is Tommy Tiernan. I think it's Tommy Tiernan's new show on Channel 4, which I really, really want to see. And it's about the Troubles. It's supposed to be brilliant. So if you're in the UK or Ireland, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm dying to see it. But yeah, my thing with the library, apart from it pointing to the Valyrian scrolls, the fact that we're seeing this library for the first time through Sam, and we didn't see it with Tyrion, who was so excited about the Winterfell library, it just shows you how dire things are getting for the Night's Watch when nobody gives a shit about the library, that Tyrion didn't even know it was there. Basically. Otherwise he would have spent his entire time there. He said, because John said, "Oh, Winterfell has hundreds of books," and Sam was like, "There's thousands of books here." And I love how John doesn't give a hoot about what Sam has found, but Sam finds it interesting, and I think there'll be definitely, like, I know Sam finds out some things through the library by the end of Dance, but I think that will be his job in the Citadel. Hopefully it'll be done in a nicer way than it was in the show. So I want to talk about a different theory. There is a theory that Jorah Mormont knows Jon's true heritage, true Targ heritage, and I think that's true. I think Benjen would have told him. As we've talked about before, why was Benjen at the wall in the first place? I would go a step further. I wonder, was there always a conspiracy to get Jon to the wall, to get the true king of Westeros to the wall?
It was Lewin, wasn't it? Who made the suggestion for Jon to go to the wall?
Lewin convinced Ned to take him. Jon came up with it.
Yeah.
The first time we meet Jon, he decides where he's going to go, or he wants to go, and Lewin convinces Ned to let him go. But I feel like that was always the plan, because there would have been nowhere else for him to go. So I think there may have been a conspiracy to get Jon as the king to the wall, so that they would have a Targaryen king at the wall. They would have when winter came, they would have the king they needed. They would have a force, or somebody that would draw a force to the wall, potentially. Now, it might be reading too much into it, but he tells him this whole story about Aemon. This is the first John chapter in the book.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's getting this whole story about Aemon being offered the kingship secretly and turning it down and believing his vow is more important. And it looks like Mormont is testing John, but I don't think you need to test John at this stage. I mean, he saved Mormont's life. I think he's proved himself as a brother, but it's like as if it's such a contrast to Sam's bit with the library, because it's like as if Mormont doesn't trust this information to be written down. John won't take it in if it's written down almost, or it'll be still lost. Like, he needs John to know this. He needs to hear it from Mormont. It's the next best thing from hearing it from Aemon himself. So there's something about the way he's talking to him and the way the Raven screams. I said Raven, like a Phoenix Knights or something. Raven. The Raven screams "King, King, King" at him when he's saying it, and John is like, typical John. Well, I have a vow to, and blah blah. But yeah, I don't know. There's something a bit weird. There's something a bit fishy about it.
I think he tells him the story about Aemon almost being king, because this is very similar to John and John's history and John's potentially what his destiny could have been, and now he's at the wall. I think that what Mormont is, I think he knew. I think he definitely knew. And what I think again he's testing is, well, what's different here is your brother is now a king. Gone off to war before, but now he's been elevated to this position where all the Northern Lords recognise him as king. He's going to be doing this, and he'll have all these, the kudos to Rob, and you won't have nothing that you do will be recognised. That to Mormont must be doubly kind of, because he knows that John should be king, not Rob.
Yeah.
So this is probably where he's coming from. I think, and I think you're right. I think you did need to kind of hear something like that out loud. Interesting that the words with the Raven or the Raven, if you mix them up, the Raven said "fool king" and "snow strong." So I mean, that could mean Joffrey. It could mean look at this fool king, strong. It could be. It could be a number of things. The only other thing that because John does seem jealous of Rob about the kind of sibling rivalry almost, between them. So there is an issue there, and I'm sure that Mormont's picked up on that.
Is he jealous of Rob, or is he jealous or disappointed that he's missing out on getting to go fight for the North? Like, he's just getting to be Mormont's shadow and pick up his trousers and bring him water and all that. He's not even getting the exciting stuff, which is another kind of, that might be another kind of piece of evidence for Mormont knowing who John is, because he's keeping him close. He's not going to risk him going out on his own and losing him. Yeah, I mean, does Mormont really think that if something happened to Rob, the North would turn and ask John to be king? I don't think so.
No, I think it's more a safety. I think it's more a safety thing. I think it's more his potential claim, and it's kind of like you're safe up at the wall. No one's going to come up here to get you. Whereas if you were loose in the Seven Kingdoms or anywhere near King's Landing, then you'd be a massive threat. Maybe too many people know who you are. So you're safer up here. Let me tell you this story about Aemon, who who equally was safer here at the Wall and has lived a good long life, and you know, he's valued here at the Wall. You can be valued here at the Wall.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I mean, and it is funny when he says your brother will be adorned in silks and velvets of all different colors, and you know, in the next chapter, the crown doesn't sit easily on Rob's head at all.
Oh
and
yes,
it doesn't seem comfortable at all. Like
no,
it's just
he
this,
can't.
like,
He can't wait to take it off.
yeah, wanting what you like, wanting what you think is going to be great isn't always.
I think we've also got to remember that Mormont is not a spring chicken anymore, and he's very concerned about who's going to be. I mean, look at who they've got there up at the Wall. If there's sort of people like Thorne and arseholes there, so he's probably concerned about command after he goes, and he knows that they're all going to be on the Wall. There's every chance that he's not going to come back. So this is something that's forefront in Mormont's mind, you know, and plus in him somewhere. And Starks are notoriously well versed in being commanders of the Night's Watch. So, you know, please don't go, John. Give you one more time. Stay here. Remember your vows.
And the last time we saw John, he was running off. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. Like, I think it can make sense either way, whether he knows or not. But I feel like there's a lot more to his story. Of course, we'll never find out, but there is a lot more, I think, that he found out from Benjen. So yeah, so that's John 1. And
just one more thing before there is a lot, actually. Just one more thing. Donal Noy features again in this chapter, and it's important to note that he was, thanks to the Baratheons, he was at Storm's End during the siege, and he was the smith who created Rob's Warhammer. Very famous quote where he compares the Baratheon boys to different metals. So Robert was true steel, made for fighting. Stannis was like iron, so he would. And Renly was copper, so shiny and bright, but not really worth anything. And that really sticks in your mind to kind of describe the different. You know, we talked last week about the sibling rivalry between the Baratheon boys here with Proudwing and things, you know. I will bring up here, I don't know if you know this, Kat, but there is a very famous theory about Donal Noy and how he lost his arm.
No. Do I know? I don't think so.
So it's a bit gruesome. The theory is, remember at Storm's End, they'd eaten the cattle, then they'd eaten the cats and the dogs, and then they'd got down to the rats and the the wax in the books and things, like the glue in the books and things. And the theory is that Donal Noy was so much of a Baratheon man through and through that he even chopped his own arm off to provide meat. So that's who would ever know that? Who would ever know? And I don't know who came up with that theory, but
is that a theory, or is that not what happened?
No, I think it's just nobody knows in the books how he lost his arm. It's never it's never explained, but I think maybe we're expected to make that leap, that he gave up his own arm when they were all starving. Yeah, that's how bad it got. But yeah,
Sonny Frank asks, do we know why Jeor how do you say
Jeor? Well, he usually second or third, even third sons in the northern houses are encouraged to join the Night's Watch. Traditionally, that's how it's been. I mean, I think the Night's Watch is seen as just a band of rapers and murderers these days. There doesn't seem to be as much honour in joining the Night's Watch, but we've got to remember that Mormont's been there for probably most of his adult life. No, he hasn't. No.
Well, he had a family.
Did he?
Well,
Right, okay. I'm completely out
wait a
of the
minute.
loop with
He's
Jor then.
Jorah's dad, right?
Of course, yeah, of course.
So
Yeah, so yeah.
I
Hadn't even thought of that.
assumed there was I assumed that he did it because it's the honourable thing to do. But on Bear Island, they would have more. They might come in contact more with wildlings, and
Yeah.
they would probably be more aware of what's going on and how bad the Night's Watch was getting.
Yeah.
And he decided, okay, I've raised my family, and now I'm going to go in. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
somebody who goes in late into the priesthood or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. A defense of Bear Island. Yeah.
Yeah. Sonny is saying he was the leader of Bear Island and joined after Jorah ran away. Yeah.
Ah.
So I think he was just he wanted to serve. It seems that he wants now that may fit into the Illuminati theory that we talked a lot about with A Game of Thrones. And it's funny that all the way from Arya 2 to Arya 3, we're basically, well, Davos 1 as well, based on your theory, perhaps. We're getting a lot of references potentially to the Night's Watch and the Wall, but also to our Illuminati theory, since Hoster's words are getting very cryptic on his deathbed, which we'll get into now when we get into Cat. But if there was some sort, it'd be interesting to know when Jorah. That has all happened recently. That's not that long ago, when Jorah was caught or selling slaves.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
What's the time frame on that? 10
Well,
years?
yeah, within, I'd say, probably about 10, 15 years. I think, yeah, Jorah's like in his early 40s now, isn't he, in the story?
Yeah. So yeah, so just
Yeah.
I'll get into it when we get to the cat chat. Well, I suppose we're going to the cat chapter right now. So interestingly, we get John 1 and Cat 1 back to back, and Cat is patiently or impatiently, as everybody is, waiting at River Run for Rob to take some sort of action. And it opens with Rob's making demands, sending demands off to Cersei. They're completely ridiculous. They're completely outlandish. I don't know what the point is of that. Maybe you know. Is it basically saying, yeah, here's our demands. We know they're ridiculous. Basically, we don't want to treat you.
It's got to be. I mean, you read through each of the demands, and just the first two, the very first two, can't ever be fulfilled, even if Cersei wanted them to be fulfilled. So release the Stark girls, and the Lannister cousins will be released. Well, even if she wanted to do that, she doesn't know where Arya is. So the first demand is out straight away. Return Ned's bones. I don't think Cersei knows where. I don't think anybody at this stage knows where Ned's bones are. So those two things are unlikely to be fulfilled. I know in the TV show, Littlefinger weirdly turns up somewhere with his time traveler with a box of Ned's bones from somewhere. But yeah, I think, to me, the only significance of this ridiculous pact is to mirror back to a pact that has happened before in the past. And maybe it's illustrating that, you know, these pacts maybe don't work or can never work. Even if you wanted to be able to fulfill your part of the pact, it's impossible. You can't do it. It's just, yeah, I think that's the significance of the demands and the pact.
Or is it that they're just sitting around there so long that the list just gets more outlandish, and they just become more frustrated, and they're not willing to move on any of their demands. I mean, Karstark gets up and walks out.
Yeah.
I felt like the crown thing not fitting him was a little bit overdone, but I do think, you know, a lot of people after Ned died definitely saw Rob as their protagonist then. They definitely saw him as, you know, especially in the show. But in the book too, I guess. But yeah, the crown not sitting easy. It was a bit overdone maybe, but it works, I guess. I have a question. Is Rob wrong to be sending Theon to the Iron Islands? I mean, forget that we know the future.
Not necessarily. I think what he's been. You've got to remember that Rob's 15. He's very naive. Naive enough to ask Cleos Frey to trot over down to King's Landing, deliver a message to Cersei, and then can you pop back into back up to where we are in the Riverlands and back into captivity? Thank you very much. And it's like, really, that's quite naive. I mean, I know he wouldn't have gone alone. He would have had a guard with him, but still, even just delivering the demands of that pact seemed quite naive. With sending Theon to the Iron Islands, these are two young boys that have grown up like brothers, very similar to Rob and Ned. And they would have been egging each other on as, you know, these young boys, teenagers. And Theon probably had more of an elevated sense of self and importance and what he would be able to bring in you know, negotiating with his father. So I think they were very naive about that. But I think that, I mean, just the way that Rob flippantly says, if Balon Greyjoy wants to be king, let him be king. He can be king of the Iron Islands. You know, we will kind of carve it up between us. We'll be allies. Because he will have listened to his best friend. You know, I'll get my family on your side, and we can be allies. He's not thinking.
He's not his best friend
strategically.
Though,
no,
that's the problem. If
Yeah.
Jon was by his side, do you think he'd even come up with this idea?
But I do think that Theon does think that he's Rob's best friend.
But do you think Rob would even have entertained the idea? Would Jon have allowed him to entertain that idea? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. No.
And I think there is a very easy way, not an easy way, but I think there's a logical way Kat could have shut that down. She could have said, well, Theon, imagine if we had Tommen or Joffrey Baratheon. Imagine we had them as captives, and 10 years from now we need the Lannisters' help to go off and fight somebody else. Would you trust sending Tommen or Joffrey back to Casterly Rock? And of course the answer would be no. And the Iron Islands are even more like tribal and more kind of like less likely to be trusted than, you know, it's yeah. And he even suggests that he would be willing to make them to give them their own power to he said, well, if I have a crown, they can have their own king. Like, why?
Yeah.
So I think he's losing it. I don't think I'm not entirely sure he's wrong to send Theon, but I think he probably should send somebody with Theon.
If you think about the position that he's in, though, he's fueled by vengeance. He's lifted up onto this brand new pedestal as the new king of the North, or king in the North, and so he's probably kind of drunk on this on this power. He's still got his mum hanging around in the background, and she was horrible with him. You know, when she was saying. When she was goading him and saying, "Oh, is the reason that you don't want Jaime, or you fear him back in the field again? You don't think you're going to be able to beat him this time?" And it's like, what a horrible thing for a mother to say to her son in that position, like, but you know, publicly as well. I mean, I know it was only in front of her own brother, but still, it's she throws. The thing that annoys me about Kat yet again in this situation is she throws this guilt about his sisters onto him, and it's like, just hang on a minute, Kat. Whose fault is it that the girls are even in this situation in the first place? Yet you've just thrown all of that onto your son. What a shitty thing to do.
I think she does kind of acknowledge, though.
She does later on. Oh, I was terrible. You know, it's too much. You know, I shouldn't have done that. The other thing as well is this flip-flopping that Kat does between describing Rob's father as, oh, he's too much like his father, he's too much like his father. And then in the next breath, she talks about my Ned, as if, almost as if it is two different people. So,
I did find that
does...
particularly heartbreaking. The description of waking up and thinking he was going to still be there. And I mean, it is really heartbreaking. I guess this chapter, more than a lot of chapters, I think, shows how isolated Rob is compared to other kings. For better or worse, other kings have counsel with them to help them, and he doesn't really have anyone. And it isn't really surprising that he goes and breaks his pact later on, because he just wants somebody to be nice to him. And even the way he snaps at Edmure for calling him boy, which he's right to snap at Edmure for calling him boy. That isn't like, he can't do that, even when Edmure is defending him. But I think he's very isolated, and he's only 15. And he doesn't have a nice, your Mormont or a Tyrion, or he doesn't have anybody around him, or an Osha or Old Nan, or anyone to kind of even,
or a Meister.
Yeah, nobody. Yeah, actually, he doesn't.
I don't think there is one on the road. No.
Never thought of that. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so Hoster, he's dying, obviously, and he is mumbling about unfinished tasks and regrets. So, what unfinished tasks and regrets does Hoster have?
I think sorry, go on.
No, I was just wondering, is it to do with the Illuminati?
I think so. I think he regrets that he didn't possibly that he didn't make a great match between Lysa and Jon Arryn. I think he probably I think there's some deep-rooted regret there about something to do with the Blackfish. There's all sorts of theories about the Blackfish, that he's gay and he was shunned, and because Hoster had all these wives lined up for him. Edmure seems to be a bit of a kind of question mark over Edmure's head here in this whole scenario. Why does Edmure feel uncomfortable being around their father? Like Cat says, you'd rather be out, fighting in the field than be in this room. And, it's like, is this something to do with Edmure wanting to be, inherit the River Run, and maybe this is something, because again, we don't know why Hoster is dying. There could be a number of things going on here in the background. Blackfish hasn't been in the picture, so has something been going on there to lead to this situation? But I do think he's got what he's saying are the ramblings of regret about this kind of plan that they all had, that sort of Ninepenny Kings era, that something didn't work out. Or, I don't know, I mean, there's this Tansy comes up a few times, and there are actually there's a character called Tansy. And also Tansy is something that you'd take if you wanted to bring on a miscarriage, and there's the whole Lysa, and did she sleep with Littlefinger, and whose child is Sweet Robin, really, and, there's a whole mess of things going on there, I think. So it's no wonder that Hoster's troubled at this stage.
My dark mind instantly went to, was Edmure abused because he's not married? There doesn't seem to be any pressure for him to marry. If he can't stand to be around Hoster, it wouldn't be the first time that abuse is hinted at. He also mistakes Cat, I think, for her mother at one stage.
We don't really get to know. Is there any history at all about Cat's mother?
I said to you before, the only thing I know is that she's a Went,
right,
and that a Went was killed at the Tower of Joy.
Okay.
That's the only. I don't know what the connection is there. I need to do a little bit more research. But remember her mother at all?
Well, when she's reminiscing as well about her childhood and the Riverlands, which she did a lot in the previous book, she doesn't tend to mention her. She doesn't mention her mother at all.
I wonder, was Ed Muir shunned because he's the reason? Maybe he was blamed for her death, in the same way that
she
Tywin
died in childbirth.
in the same way that Tyrion is blamed by Tywin and Cersei. Maybe Hoster just kind of ignored. It doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It could be just emotional and mental abuse. It could be just like neglect. Completely ignored. Like Hoster just doesn't want anything to do with him.
There is a real confidence thing there as well with Ed Muir, you know, like later on with Hoster and the funeral. It's just that excruciating embarrassment. That they really highlighted that scene actually on the TV show. I thought they did that quite well.
And I love that guy that's playing Ed Muir. He's great. But yeah, no, it's it's strange that Kat has so few memories of her mother. Really think about that kind of influence. Like a lot of women would think about the lack of an influence or the influence their mother had on their way they are mother, even or wonder, am I doing what my mother, like there's nothing like that, you know. Like I'd imagine if any of our characters were to have children, they would, like, if Tyrion, for instance, was to have a child, I'm certain he would think about how he's as a father compared to how Tywin was. And Cersei thinks about her mother, I think, at some stages, and Dany, but yeah, Kat doesn't really. It's a strange one.
I think this chapter as well, it really sets out, similar to the Arya chapter, we get a really good sense of what's happening in the landscape. So we get all this really graphic imagery of terror and butchering in the Riverlands, and there's talk about the Blackfish is explaining to Kat about who's out there, basically, and he talks about Dondarrion and this kind of band of ex-King's men who are running around and kind of tripping up the horrible men that Tywin has out in the field. And there's a quote here where Kat says, "May the gods preserve them," speaking about Dondarrion. So she's like, oh, thank God they're out there, sort of kind of on our side. But when she said, "May the gods preserve them," and I just thought that is a real Lady Stoneheart, preserving, and and also the comet as well. Blackfish has as a view on the comet being the Red Messenger.
Well, he says that his men think it's the Red Messenger, but he thinks it's blood.
Yes, that's right.
And that Ed Muir thought it was the Tully colours, or I don't know. It's definitely a messenger. It's a message for anybody.
Mention about Harrenhal again in this chapter.
Yes.
You've got to ask yourself, these locations that don't have weirwood trees anymore, that have had the weirwood trees cut down, like Harrenhal, was it cursed because the weirwood trees weren't there? Was it a target for the dragons to attack it because, was it unlucky because there were no weirwood trees there? And we know that the Eyrie kind of has the same sort of problem.
But they have at least they have a weirwood throne.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes it's not on its roots. Sonny Frank and the Goodbye Girl are having an interesting conversation about Jorah Mormont and your Mormont. So Sonny or the Goodbye Girl said that if she remembers correctly, the ladies, he felt he was shamed into joining. And Sonny says that he was shamed, that he thinks it's unusual that he became commander so quickly, probably because he was so capable and he was already
Okay, so he was,
house.
he was
Yeah.
so ashamed of Jorah doing that he headed up to the wall. Well, yeah, and you know, the women of Bear Island are more than capable of like taking over. So
also, I like the way the Goodbye Girl says that Jorah was a right Aegis, and and I can see why he chose the black. He had absolute control of his men. Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation was that Jorah would end up going to the wall. That's what Ned would probably have tried to do, to send Jorah to the wall. And maybe you're taught that he could convince Ned to send him to the wall in the same way that he successfully convinces Cersei to send Ned to the wall, that you need good men at the wall. So but yeah, that totally makes sense. Thanks for that, guys. Yeah, and the last thing then is treating with Renly. Approaching Renly is the plan that they're going for.
yeah,
Which seems
so
common sense to me.
yeah, but again, I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it? It's kind of like Balon, no, Renly, yes, and it's like,
well, once you recognize Renly, you're burnt your bridges with Stannis. So it's a very dangerous thing to do. But then Stannis is so close to anybody else claiming kingship over any part of his dominion. Yeah.
I mean, they've got to consider in all of this which other king of the 5 kings would be happy to say, yeah, okay, Rob, you go and have the north. That's fine. We'll just chop it up north south. Cool, get on with it. Off you go.
Yeah.
And maybe they think Renly is the easiest option.
Like, Rob is trying to cut off a large chunk of Westeros there for himself, all the way down to the Vale and across the Gift and God's Eye, and a lot of Westeros he's taken.
North is huge, yeah.
It's huge, but like, you know, it's not going to go well, I don't think. Obviously, it doesn't go well, but anyway, then we move into Tyrion 2. I loved this chapter. This is a very quotable chapter, I feel, as well.
Yes.
We have Tyrion opening. There's 2 big things in this chapter. Well, 3 if you count Bran towards the end, but his conversation with Jaina Slynt and then his conversation with Varys, and the beginning of a beautiful relationship. I do feel, so like me, George R.R. Martin's favorite movie is Casablanca, and I definitely get that kind of similar, kind of the police chief and Rick, kind of that kind of relationship with Tyrion and Varys throughout the series. I feel like that's a model for that relationship.
It is a bit. It's like a kind of film noir chapter.
Yeah. So he's getting Jaina Slynt drunk in this chapter, and he's trying to get information out of him. He obviously has a plan for what he's going to do. And I know people wonder why he's doing it. Well, Tywin wanted him to get rid of Slynt. Tywin doesn't want him to have Harrenhal, so yeah, he has to get rid of Slynt. But I definitely think that Tyrion he's doing it because his dad wants him to do it, obviously. But I also think he's doing it because he wants justice for Ned because of what happened. And it'll please Cersei and it'll please Tywin, I think, if they
could be, or it could be that he just sees this as an easy win to test his political teeth in the capital. It's very, again, I'm very wary of how characters are written from this point of view aspect that lead us into, I need to think of this person as a good character. Tyrion was one of my favourite characters on the first read of this series of books. Oh, I can, curl up in the evening with a Tyrion chapter, my favourite. I'm really going to enjoy this Tyrion chapter. Rereading up to now, this particular reread, and there are certain things. Tyrion feels naturally to the reader more than any other point of view character as the voice of the reader. He just does. He seems vulnerable. He's got, you know, this chapter in particular is perfect for showing us as readers how clever Tyrion can be, or thinks he can be, when it comes to working people out and using the information that he finds to his advantage. And it's an enjoyable, rollicking, good read, the Tyrion chapters.
He's as blind as the reader, for sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the things that underpin Tyrion's character as being maybe more grey than black and white, good, bad, is this kind of tortured feeling that he has about Shay and about Tysha and about, you know, who is just that feeling that links to his core self about who really has ever shown me affection. And that goes to the relationship with his brother and sister and father, the relationships with Shay currently at the moment. I think he's such a rich character, Tyrion, that we always enjoy, and this chapter is no exception. And it's a very, you know, plot wise, it's just a really, it's like a little mystery within a chapter.
Yes, yeah. I think the big thing is he knows that there's something not right. Because, well, Jaina Slint on the council, which I forgot that he was even on the council as well. But he knows there's something not right because Jaina Slint won't tell him, won't give him certain information. So he can't even get him drunk enough to keep him around and use him and manipulate him. He's just not good. He's not going to get that. But also the fact that he shows very little problem with killing babies. And also this idea that he had no idea that Cersei had planned to send Ned to the Wall. And him and Varys talk about it later, that Jaina Slint went to the execution, the trial, I guess, that day of Ned, knowing that Ned had to be executed.
Yeah.
Even though Joffrey hadn't made that decision yet. Apparently, according to Cersei, according to everybody else, Varys, everybody was shocked. So obviously we know that that's Littlefinger. It has to be Littlefinger.
Yeah.
There isn't anybody else that it could be.
Yeah.
So it's basically just confirming for Tyrion that it is Littlefinger. We haven't seen Littlefinger yet, right? We haven't seen him in anything. He wasn't in the Sansa chapter, I don't think.
In this book?
Yeah. I don't think we've come across him again yet.
No, I don't think we have. No.
It's just he's almost been removed.
Yeah.
As a character, I don't even know if his name has come up yet. Has it?
Well, he was much more linked to Ned's comings and goings in King's Landing because he visited Ned a couple of times, didn't he?
Yeah, and I
think he featured in Ned.
Yeah, and he featured in Sansa's chapters.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just that idea that he hasn't, and that quote from Varys then in this chapter with like, you know, even a little man can cast a great shadow or something like that.
Yeah.
That could be Littlefinger, you know.
Yes.
That's kind of, you know, and he brings up that riddle again that he left in the last Tyrion chapter, to say that power resides where people think it resides. And I think Varys is just very like trying to basically out Littlefinger. But I think Tyrion probably knows, you know, Littlefinger was in charge of the City Watch, and now Slint is on the council. So I think.
Well, this is very George R.R. Martin, this quote, because that, I think his personal convictions, that feeling of why is it that the man with the sword has to obey this boy king who's 15? Why does it work that way? Why hasn't he got the power? And this is a young, and obviously it's all about, as this quote explains, it's I mean, you can think of it now in modern times. How do the police maintain law and order, like generally overall? If you think of it in numbers, It's a perception thing. It's a power resides where people believe it resides. And I think this is very much George's voice within the text here, again telling us to just be wary of what we're reading and where we're actually seeing people having power or perceived power or potential power. This kind of links to much later on in the series when we get that feeling of sense of leadership from people like Bolton, where he doesn't, people, men lean in to listen what he has to what he has to say. He doesn't need to have this big, loud, commanding voice because he has this sense of power. And so we get, again, inside Tyrion's head, where we get the feeling that he doesn't trust anybody, really. He's second guessing everybody, and especially in this nest of vipers situation that is in the Red Keep, he doesn't trust Varys, but he seems to be softening to him a little bit. Maybe he's just seeing that, like, I can use, you're your own man, but maybe there's potential here for you to become my man as well. One of the things that Varys maintains when he's questioned, this is a big thing for readers, what are the motivations of Littlefinger and Varys? Are they the two manipulators in this entire story? And Varys constantly, you don't really get to hear, you formulate your own opinion about Littlefinger, and there's a vast array of theories about who Littlefinger is and where he comes from and what his motivations are. But with Varys, he maintains constantly that he's a servant of the realm. And I just want to, this part, I think, in the books, in Game of Thrones, it was setting up the story and the series. Now we're getting into the part of the text which leaps forward, as so there'll be spoilers everywhere, left, right, and centre here. But this, for me, links to the phrase that Varys says at the very end of Dance with Dragons, where the White Raven comes and Pycelle has been murdered, and he says, "It's for the children." Ever since I saw that, read that, I thought, we're expected to believe children as in like the
next generation.
the next generation, or even children as in he has this relationship with the children that he has working for him in the Red Keep. What if that was meant to be children of the forest? I'm just going to say it and leave it there, and maybe we can pick this up at a later stage. But when Varys says he's servant of the realm, my question is, whose realm? Who's the realm of who? The realm of kings, the realm of the original inhabitants of this, why is he a servant of the realm in Westeros when he comes from somewhere completely different? I just very
well, it seems like it can't be the next generation when there's so much alluded to the abuse that the little birds go through because they work for Varys. Unless he has an army of children somewhere that he's rescued. I mean, it is interesting that in the next chapter, Arya and the brothers are going to rescue a 2-year-old child. There are definitely a lot of, Arya herself, any young person, any child in this story, they are abused, they're disenfranchised, or they're isolated in some way. They're definitely, I don't know. It is a very cryptic line. And again, it would feed in with that quote, even a little man can cast a big shadow, or whatever it is. If that's the children that he's referring to. So I liked what you said there about Tyrion being, he definitely is the voice of the reader, but the darker he gets, the more I think Sam takes over that role as we go through the series. Especially at the end of this chapter, where he asks Bran, would you, if I asked you to kill a mother and her child without question, would you do it? And Bran says, well, I'd have one question, how much? And, you know, and Tyrion just thinks, why do I need Jaina Slint and what's his name, Arthur Deem or whatever his name is, when I have 100 men that can do what I do. But there doesn't seem to be any fear in it. Like, he instantly wants to be with Shay, but there doesn't seem to be any fear.
Well, he's realizing the dangerous situation that he's in and who he's relying on and who he's got around him. That whole interaction to me was just one of those reminders, just one of those reminders of, whoa, Bron, who are you? Who put you here? What do you mean? Do we, you know, but when you're talking about when it's that, like, depends on the price. Why are you there? Has somebody paid a specific price for you to be as close to Tyrion as, and making yourself suddenly indispensable and feet right under the table, and that so that whole interaction is whoa, Bron.
Well, and how much, and it's interesting that he thinks of Shay straight away. I mean, I wonder, was there an original plan by Tywin to have Shay killed in front of Tyrion or something, or to, if she did get pregnant, to have her killed? That I mean, it's kind of remarkable that Tyrion doesn't have any bastards of his own, isn't it?
The other thing, just one more. There could be. Penny and Groat. The comet was referenced again in this chapter, and the holy men. There are more holy men descending on King's Landing, apparently because of the comet, and they're like spreading fear, and you just get this sense within King's Landing again that there's this bubbling shit under the surface that isn't going to come as a surprise later on when we get the riots, and the bread riots where everybody's starving, and there's this whole incident where Sansa's in danger. Those riots there where Lolis is raped by 100 men. The holy men that are descending on King's Landing, are they responsible, do you think, for the riots that come later on? Are they a big part of kind of,
I think so,
this atmosphere of fear? And I mean, I thought the way they did this in a TV show much later on, when you've got the Faith Militant, was terrifying. I thought I had nightmares about those scenes with them, like running down the stairs with all the heavy, you know, like just everything, and the you know, the self-flagellation and all that, you know, just the horrific, and that sense that there are more holy men, and faith, again, this thing that I've got about the faith of the Seven that are descending on King's Landing. So it's this is a very, very enjoyable chapter.
I feel like modern Western societies have a very kind of peaceful idea of religion now, but I mean, for most of human history, Christianity wasn't that peaceful.
Brutal.
I mean, even the 20th century, if you look at parts of the Troubles, there were definitely religious men on both sides that were very aggressive and violent, and definitely pushing the political and military agendas. But it's definitely, it's going to switch over to where people think the power is, which is why Stannis is so savvy to see that. When we get to Davos later on, and Davos himself is savvy enough to see that people think there's a lot of power behind religion. So, but just what the thing with people think power is where it resides, or people, the power is wherever people think it resides. Tyrion has fallen victim of this. He thought Cersei had way more power than she actually has. She doesn't control Joffrey, and Littlefinger is definitely pulling all the strings, because the only way they can find out about these bastards is from Littlefinger and his brothels, and he'll know where everybody is. So definitely Tyrion thought the power was with Cersei, but it's not. Maybe even Cersei thought the power was with Cersei, but it's not. So yeah, that's going to fall apart. I do have a little bit of a theory coming up, actually. I just remembered.
Okay.
The Arya chapter.
Okay.
So
well, I'm ready to move on to Arya.
Yeah, this is a rough chapter. Very short but brutal what they're seeing. Couple of things. The Knights, Yoren and the Knights Watch, the brothers, they're going along a route a little bit to get away from the gold cloaks. But they have to hunt, do a little bit of poaching perhaps, just to survive. Again, no money. They can't, like they're trying to get what they can. So they obviously didn't bring enough with them to cover any emergencies. And there's reference, we have this opening line which I just want to take a quick look at. It's pretty awful. It opens with, the road was little more than 2 ruts through the weeds. It's this very kind of simple kind of opening line, but there's even a lot of darkness in that. The idea that they're off the beaten track, they're trapped where they shouldn't be, and
there are graves everywhere.
Yeah, and she goes on to talk about how the human flood on the King's Road, which is just that idea of the refugees leaving because they're being driven out by Gregor's men, has been reduced to a trickle at this stage where they're off the beaten track a little bit. But as they're going north, they are sometimes followed by men who are trying to protect their fields. They see fires. Eventually they're getting closer and closer to danger. As they see that miles and miles of scorched earth, and it seems, I feel like Gregor's pillaging and raping definitely has a purpose and an agenda, that it seems to be very systematic. It seems to be moving towards them, so it's moving south more. And I don't think this is just a military thing. I think this is an economic thing. I think Tywin is pushing people south. And I just wonder, did he and Littlefinger come up with this idea of taxing people going into King's Landing? And it would be a great way of making a lot of money really quickly, because he needs a lot of money really quickly. And it has a dual purpose, because Tywin likes to do things that have dual purposes or many purposes. And I just wonder, is that part of the reason, sending more and more refugees south? It visually, the optics of it, it's scary. It's not good for Robb. It makes Robb look bad. But also, and everybody in all those lords along the way look bad. And just that idea that they're going to make a lot of money, people trying to get into King's Landing.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, because I'm just thinking about why people are moving in that direction. I mean, they're burning, they're being burned out, aren't they? It's horrific what's happening. The whole area is being scorched. So in that situation, would you want to move north or would you want to move south?
Well, if autumn is coming, or it's there, autumn is already there.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to move south. There's nowhere else to go.
I mean, I think initially on the surface of it, this terror and destruction and the fact that it's so horrific and there's like rape and pillage and all of that, and those stories are going to be going back to Robb's camp, is deliberately nasty so that it draws out, the river lords, and Rob is forced to kind of come
Yeah.
out and face Tywin. You know, Tywin is being very,
But
he's using
Tywin
his
can
military
deny it.
tactics.
Because
Yes, he
Gregor
can.
is at the helm,
Yeah,
he can
yeah,
reasonably say, "It's not. He went off
yeah.
the rails. Nothing to do
Yes,
with me."
exactly. Yeah,
So
exactly.
I
Yeah,
I think there's economic, because I mean there's reason to assume later on that the Lannisters basically, they've not much money. The mines are empty, so um, there's going to be too many people to feed in the kingdom if they don't do something about it, and also they need more people in King's Landing that
yeah.
maybe they can hold as a threat over the rest of Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to keep all these people here.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't. It just occurred to me that
Well,
maybe
resources, isn't it? It's just
yeah,
it's kind of gathering all your resources together
yeah, yeah, and bringing them south to
to the
King's
crown.
Landing. Yeah. So the yeah, that was my main thing here. The woman that they rescue a woman who's lost her arm and a 2-year-old, and the woman dies. But it just like Arya just hears her cries over and over again, and she kind of goes away to go to leave them, and she has this moment with the wolves that come out while she's taking a pee, and she they don't harm her, they go off howling, and it ends with her listening to the howling and the distant screams, so they're really like trapped between a rock and a hard place.
Mhm.
But just the amount of suffering that she's seeing at this stage, uh, is she's suffering more than any other Stark by like
Yes, and there is a part of this chapter where she kind of recognizes all of this and she remembers that she is just a little girl, because she
yeah,
is. So, there are these poignant moments from time to time where Arya just like, wow, I mean, can you imagine Sansa in that situation, or can you imagine anyone else really in that situation? It's horrific, and we've got to remember she's what, 8, 9 at this. I think she's a little bit older than Bran, maybe. She's not that old though. The woman was what she was effectively doing. I read that as she's the constant please is this is a literal mother's mercy. She's pleading for mercy, which links very nicely to foreshadowing Arya later on.
what happens to the little girl? I don't remember what
She
happens to
hangs
her.
around for quite a while. And she annoys Arya. I think that's where she calls she calls her stupid all the time. Shush, be
Ah,
quiet,
okay.
stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kind of hangs around. And Arya feels as though she's burdened by her, but there is an incident, I think, later on where she has to kind of save her. But there's a huge difference here, isn't there, between and it's quite sad really when Yoren is reminiscing about the Night's Watch and how powerful it used to be and how much respect it would command from any of the lords on. So it would be a nice little journey for him, and he's been doing this for 30 years or whatever. He'd set out, he'd gather some men, and he would be hosted at every single place that they stopped and be able to travel quite safely. This is a different scenario,
Yeah.
completely different scenario, and there's war ravaging around them. They've also got the Queen's men that are after them, so they're now having to be on watch, so they're taking it in turns to be on watch. And then there's this sub story that's going on, I think, in this chapter, which is Arya's connection to the wolves, her connection to Nymeria, the fact that the wolves turned away from her, but they're still there, roaming around the Riverlands and round Harrenhal and round the God's Eye. And I think they're all there because they're drawn to this magic, this old, they're linked. They're magical animals that relate very much to the first men and the children of the forest and that old magic. And I think that's why they're kind of stuck in this location. but yeah, I mean, Yoren wishing that they'd gone by ship is, is it just that's
Yeah.
like so much of a foreshadowing his own death. When these are the things that you pick up on rereads that just slap you in the face.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that by the time if you they were successful in getting this truth to the wall, man, they would have made good members of the Night's Watch, because they would have been so bloody grateful to be at the wall compared to being on this journey. This is like nightmare, this journey. And being at the wall would be probably a lot easier, because at least you have meals, you can get warm. Well, they're not even allowed to light a fire at this stage because it's too dangerous. So yeah, there's something else in here. As the woman is pleading, like you're saying, she's saying please. She says, Arya rode as far ahead of the wagons as she dared, so she wouldn't have to hear the little girl crying and listen to the woman whisper. She remembered a story old Nan told once about a man imprisoned in a dark castle by evil giants. He was very brave and smart, and he tricked the giants and escaped. But no sooner was he outside the castle than the others took him and drank his hot red blood. Now she knew how he must have felt. Is that Bran?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The giants. That might be foreshadowing what's going to happen with Bran at Winterfell.
The others took him.
Yeah.
And that that's a very common phrase, isn't it? But like King Robert said it quite a bit. I think Ned said it once or twice. The others take you.
Yeah. It's either
because
Bran
they
or
do.
Jon.
Yeah. It's definitely a very foreshadowy.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it could be her.
Because
she's so small that everybody else will always be a giant around her. Maybe she'll plead for that later. I don't know, but it's very foreshadowing, that thing. But yeah, it's a horrible chapter in a lot of ways. Like I enjoyed the chapter, but it's just there's so much suffering, and we're only getting bits and pieces of what's happening to people outside of the characters. Like we're getting the stories of the survivors for the most part. There's a lot of suffering going on.
I think in both of these chapters as well, it's worth pointing out that if we go back to that age-old question of like, how did Arya end up with the faceless men, and that if she did, did they pursue her? Did they pursue her? Same way as maybe did the Night's Watch pursue Jon? She didn't ingratiate herself with Jack and Hagar. He calls to her. You've killed a rabbit. Well, and he kind of like he's the one that's making the effort to communicate with her, definitely. So that I mean, if you go back to that, I think that gives us some indication that further down the line, yes, the faceless men did specifically pursue Arya to be part of their order.
Yeah, because she never looks for anybody. Like Yoren came and got her. Ned got her Syrio Forel. Like definitely, there seems to be something going on there. And then finally, we're on to Davos, our first Davos chapter, and it opens with them burning wooden gods and creating Lightbringer, burning sword, which is just a load of bullshit. Even Stannis knows it's bullshit. Like he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like, yeah, great, thanks. Stannis isn't buying any of this. I feel like Stannis doesn't get fully converted to R'hllor until Renly. I think I don't think he's on board with it until then. There's a very nice contrast between Davos and Slint. Davos is he knows his shortcomings in terms of how he can best serve Stannis. He knows he can't read, so he can't read the message that Stannis wants to send out. He'll need other knights with him. Interestingly, Stannis says he's loads of knights that don't want to fight and would rather read Should you really be saying that out loud? Because you need those people to fight for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stannis is definitely aware of his shortcomings, and he's definitely got this major inferiority complex. That his sons, like typical new money, they're totally like, oh yeah, we're like, you know, we're highborn guys or whatever. And just following on, I just want to really follow on from what you said last week. He keeps saying over and over again, I owe Stannis, I owe Stannis. Stannis is my god, he says in one stage in this chapter.
Yeah.
Where does this loyalty come from? I mean, I just don't understand where this I mean, I can understand like with Jaina Slint later or earlier, like Tyrion, you know, he tries to put emphasis on the fact that at least Slint's sons will be able to have a house that they can work towards. But Davos is he's got such an inferiority complex. It's the total opposite to Janis. He never feels secure, and he just seems he owes Stannis everything. Is he worried Stannis would take it away from him again?
He possibly, but I think there's some sort of pact again. This feature in this discussion that we're having across these chapters, there seems to be a lot here about these pacts, like historic past, going way back when we're thinking about religion and inhabitants of Westeros, and then also maybe newer pacts, even the pact that Robb is offering to Cersei in the current time. And I think potentially there could have been some kind of pact based on what we don't know yet between Davos and Stannis that was much more than him bringing onions into them when they were going through the siege. He owes everything he's got, including his faith and including the future of his own sons. Everything he owes to Stannis. So he's what is it that's got him? What is it that's there? So I think just interesting to keep that on the agenda and keep paying attention to that relationship between Davos and Stannis. Just going back to the beginning of this chapter, when you mentioned that we're talking about the burning of the false gods, I just want to pause here and ask who, because we read things and we just make lots of assumptions, and one of them I think is about the religions and about the faith. And so questions here: who are the seven? What are the origins of this faith of the seven? Because we're told that it's brought over to Westeros, yet there's absolutely no trace of this faith in Essos. And this, I have to mention Order of the Green Hand, whose podcasts I really enjoy watching, and they've just been making some videos recently on the lies of the Andals, and one of the things that they were talking about was exactly that there is no trace of this religion. Even the Scepter, who's on the boat with Tyrion, whose name I can't remember. Scepter, what's she called?
Scepter, not Mordain, is it? No. Scepter Inella. No. What's her name?
No. But the woman who's got the stretch marks and
the good boobs.
Yeah. She even says that she needs to change out of her Scepter's garb when she's going and visiting the cities in Essos, because I know it's annoying, I can't think, but they're all on that ship together. So it's not a religion that's recognised. It's a very Westerosi religion, yet it was brought over to Westeros. So basically, what we've got here. Septa Lamore. Yes, thank you.
Ian says thank you.
Thank you. So this is, we can potentially take this as a manufactured religion. So And you can say, well, actually, that's quite clever. The Andals brought this religion over, and they did that to subjugate the masses. And the Order of the Green Hand was saying later on, Septon Merrybold was saying, well, the reason that we give them, he's having a conversation with Brienne and Pod, and he's saying the reason that we have 7 gods is because it's actually the same god, but that would blow people's minds, so it makes it easier. And actually, how convenient is that, you know, all the little boys worship the warrior and all the little girls, but it's almost like a perfect manufactured religion that's been made for the human inhabitants of this continent. And then I read that bit in John's chapter about the wall and the light going through the wall, and I just for whatever reason popped into my head, that really reminds me of the crystal of the faith of the 7. And from that, I went down this massive rabbit hole of going right back to, like, very potted quick history lesson. The original inhabitants of Westeros were the children of the forest and the giants. After them came were the first men, and you've got the Age of Heroes and everything, but you've the first men. Then you've got the Pact. Then you've got the Andals, who came and brought this religion of the 7, the faith, who are known as the new gods. So you've got the old gods. So the first men had this kind of paganism religion where it was very nature-based, which was similar to the children of the forest, but not exactly the same. And part of this pact, the werewoods were massively important to the children of the forest. And part of this pact was that the first men would worship their gods in front of the werewoods, which makes it sound like these religions are kind of entwined. But maybe that's almost like, if you think of Bran as like this CCTV camera who can see everything that's going on and be able to, okay, I'm witnessing that you are worshipping me. I'm going way off on a tangent here.
Part of their worship in their religion also involved blood sacrifice.
Yes.
In the same way that the Dothraki use blood in certain rituals.
Yeah.
So that would be a good way of getting a source of blood.
The first men, I think, more of them were, especially like in the north, were skin changers and wargs way back. Like, it was much more prevalent. And they, one of the reasons why they didn't record things apart from on runes and things like that was because every bit of their history, including the Pact, which is why it was all in front of the werewoods, it's a way of recording the past, the present, the future. The werewoods can capture all of that information. So I think that the advance and the fighting then between the Andals and the first men, the first men were there first, and then the Andals came over. They had better weapons, they were better equipped, there were more numbers, and they pushed back and pushed back and pushed back the first men right up to the wall. And there are, I don't know where I've got this from, whether it's World of Ice and Fire or whether I've just read it somewhere recently, but there were old kings of winter in the north, first men, that would stand on the wall and send out curses to the Andals. And I just think, were the first men clever enough to recognise, A, we are being made extinct, we're going to become extinct, this other race of human beings is going to overtake us, we're going to lose. What can we make sure that we do as a race to have some continuity in the onslaught of the Andals that are coming for us? Maybe what they did was use ice magic, and you've got this ice structure, this massive wall, which is this ice structure. Maybe what they did through using ice magic, and bear with me here, I know I'm going completely tinfoil, is they used some form of ice magic to trick the Andals into inventing a religion where this whole faith is duped into actually worshipping the old gods. They're the first men's old gods, and that's what helps them continue to have this continuity, which is why you have people like Ned who still, and I think that's could again be part of the North remembers, because quite clearly the North doesn't remember. The trees remember. Yes. And the First Men want everything to go into the trees and their magic and their magical abilities. Be just perfect for part of this story to be that George R.R. Martin is clever enough as an author to be able to introduce this completely invented, manufactured religion that links right back to the original inhabitants, and that links this idea of faith and light and dark and balance and ice and fire. And, you know, it's so, whoa, that's where I went with all of this week.
I don't think that's tinfoil at all, because the Faith of the Seven is based on Catholicism, and Catholicism, the majority, like, it's monotheistic, but it borrows from polytheistic religions. And, like, saints in particular are taken from, you know, deities or people that were worshipped in certain areas. They suddenly became saints. They were demoted in monotheistic faith, but they became saints. And that's kind of what you're getting with the blacksmith and the mother, and like, you're getting those kind of characters. And those kind of characters actually do have, like, the blacksmith is actually something that does come up in Roman and Greek religions. William Blake's poem The Tiger uses, like, blacksmith imagery, because that's what a lot of religions would see kind of God as being our form of God, form of the creator being a blacksmith. So I don't think that's tinfoil at all. It would make, I mean, most religions today find their origins in lots of different places, and a lot of them are you know, ways of. There's something I heard recently about Orthodox Jews, something that Orthodox Jews believe. Oh, I wish I could remember. I shouldn't have brought it up because I can't remember what it was. But that has changed over time. But the origins, I mean, that's what they say about pork, for instance. That pork is seen as an unhealthy, or kind of an unclean meat, because it was very dangerous to eat back in the day, without refrigeration, if it wasn't, it can kill you. Like, food poisoning from pork is really, really dangerous. So, you know, a lot of, I don't think that's tinfoil at all. I think that makes sense. I thought you were going to say that underneath it all, they're all holosexuals or something.
Maybe
they're all worshipping a holographic wall and a load of crystals.
But it just makes that whole scene, with that in mind, it makes that whole scene almost laughable. How pious the lords are. Traditional it is that these pieces of wood are set on fire, and then you've got the imagery as well of you know, the maiden and the warrior embrace each other, and the mother has the long sword thrust through her heart. So there's the whole Nissa, and everything gets thrown into this here. And of course, we've got Salador San later on, but the father falls first, and that just makes you think, oh, Ned. And
is Stannis a failed Moses then, with all of these burning effigies?
Well,
he's not going to lead his people.
The thing about Stannis, the thing about well, the thing that I'm asking myself here is, quite clearly the burning sword again is an illusion, which I'm thinking, like, the whole faith of the, you know, the Faith of the Seven is also an illusion. So, but in terms of Mel and her chanting R'hllor and light, you know, Lord of Light, if this sword is an illusion, then clearly Mel doesn't have conviction in Stannis. Maybe she was just told to go and convert him, and that's what she's doing. I don't think she genuinely has conviction in Stannis as being Azor Ahai born again. She needs a hero. She needs to pin her flag onto a hero, but I don't think that she believes it's Stannis. No. And then also, equally, what you've got is Stannis admitting to Davos that actually he's got no faith really either.
No,
he lost his faith when he lost his parents. Again, it's that kind of, you know, how could there be a God if they allow this to happen and that to happen, and you know, pain and loss and what have you. So he lost all his faith, but he does have faith in Mel's power. So there's this weird kind of mesh of needing each other to get to a certain, because look, he's got no support really. This is coming all of the time. You're hearing this. Stannis hasn't got support. He even takes the piss out of the fact that he's got no support.
I can't make sense of that. I feel like, is he so duty bound to honor the truth of, like, I don't know if he even wants to be king. Like, it's so, like, he just feels, no, I'm supposed to be king.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's a duty to himself or the truth. And I feel like this is just such a huge political misstep to bring on board a religion, as Davos says, that the people won't accept, unless Stannis knows something that we don't know, that the red priests are going to spread throughout Westeros. But I don't know.
I think that Stannis, I think Stannis is a lot more conflicted than he's painted out to be. I think he isn't always strong about his convictions. I think he has a constant battle himself between duty and ego.
Yeah.
And I think he relies on, again, you know, linking back to what Varys was saying, men, you know, power resides where men believe it resides. He can recognize a power in Mel.
Yeah.
And to the detriment of introducing this new, mysterious, uncomfortable religion to all of these lords that have got this pious faith in the Seven.
Well, there are no gods here. There's magic, but there are no gods, and I'm pretty sure George has said that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he said we won't see a god.
Yeah, because I know he is. I believe he's agnostic.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is fantasy, and I mean, often there are magical stories without any kind of deities. But I definitely, I think he has seen her power. I don't know where, unless she's shown him in some other ways. I think it's heartbreaking that his entire life is defined by the death of his parents.
And this competition with his brother.
It doesn't bode well for Arya coming off an Arya chapter. I mean, Stannis didn't even have to see his parents suffer, but Arya, I mean, she's going to see she is seeing horrendous things, but she could hear her dad's head being chopped off. So what is that going to do to her and Sansa when the time comes? But yeah, the thing that struck me about Davos, because I feel I totally agree with you. I don't think that's tinfoil, by the way, but the thing that struck me about Davos is how family orientated he is. He's 6 kids, 7 kids, and 5 of them are already
7.
5 or 4 are already dead.
By the end of Dan's, the 5 grown-up sons that he's got with him. No, 4. I think Devon's still alive. Yeah.
Devon, well, but he's with Stannis.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, Devon. AU's in the chat. Hi, AU. So again, what kind of a pact? Now, how far will Stannis go with Mel? Do you think what will he allow her to do? Moving on.
I don't know. A number of things. He's not very close to his wife, is he? He's not, he seems to have a closer relationship on lots of different levels with Mel than he does with his wife.
Mel to Stannis, right?
I think so, yeah.
So is it a way of keeping her out of the way? Did it start off as a way of keeping her out of the way, and then maybe Mel?
Maybe. Yeah.
But yeah,
Wifey's got a new
it's so
best friend.
stupid. Like, burning wooden gods and sticking a sword into a fire. Well, hey, you're Azor Ahai. And he doesn't think of himself as being Azor Ahai, right?
No.
He doesn't buy into that at all.
No.
So yeah, it's I don't know, Stannis. I like Stannis. Like I said to before, I struggle to see why people are so they're huge Stannis fans in terms of him becoming part of the realm. I mean, I don't know what kind of leadership you get with Stannis.
But it's that feel, it's that sense of justice, isn't it? That sense of like, he is, if you look at the, you legitimately, he is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
But I don't think
at this stage, so
he wouldn't be ruling a kingdom that have many men like Davos.
No.
You know. So I just wonder, he'd be ruling a kingdom with a lot more like his knights that don't want to fight for him.
Yeah. And again, bringing this entire new faith, which is immediately going to be at odds, not just with the lords that he's trying to get on, you know, to serve him now. Yeah, he's relying heavily on Mel already at this stage.
I should have looked this up. Do the faith have, or sorry, not the faith, do the red priestess and priests, do they have like their kind of like pope? Do they have like one?
There's a yes, in Volantis, in like the big red temple in Volantis, there's like a lead. I don't know what he's called, but there's a maybe AU knows, or Iron Throne if they're still there.
Yeah, I seem to remember.
There's like a head guy of that order.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting. I just wonder, what would they expect of Stannis? What would they expect of Stannis if he did become king of Westeros? Like, would they expect him to oust the faith?
I would have, yeah, well, yeah, because this faith tolerates no other faith. Yeah. So that's what would happen. Yeah.
And then where would the maesters be left in that situation? Like, Stannis is therefore going to alienate himself against the Citadel and against I mean, every single household in the country has a maester, has somebody who helped bring their children into the world. It's just such
all you ever get from Mel is that, well, he's going to see whatever you think and whatever you feel about faith, religion, you like Stannis, you don't like Stannis, whatever, he is this hero who will save this world from the next long night. So, you know, that's all she ever talks about. So
yeah, it's just it's a funny one. It's I didn't realize how, like, he's like our first out atheist, out and proud atheist in the series. I think maybe Tyrion, but Tyrion still kind of says, "Oh, the gods save me" or something. But definitely, yeah, he's definitely very different to the Stannis that you think you're going to get after the prologue. He's not the same guy at all. So, but yeah, so I like your theory. I think you're right. I think I'm on board.
Yeah.
Venero, High Priest of R'hllor Atlantis. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So that's all I have for Stannis 1.
Yeah, well, there's the big well, have I gone too far? Because I was listening to the audio version where we meet Salladhor Saan. Is that still in it? Okay. Right. So there's a huge scene here where Davos runs in the port, which is very busy, by the way. So again, you get this real build up of what's happening and what's going on outside with the small folk. Salladhor Saan, who's this Lyseni pirate, And he talks about King's Landing being ripe for the taking, and that Renly's marching up to King's Landing. So again, strategically, you can kind of figure out where everybody is in the story. But he also tells the classic story of Azor Ahai. So I'd forgotten actually that that's where we hear about this in the story. It's this conversation between Salador San and Davos. And he talks about how the sword was tempered first in the water, and then in the lion, and then in Nissa Nissa. So I just thought I would point that out, that this, one of the biggest prophecies in the entire series, was dropped into this chapter here. And this chapter is all about faith and religion, and losing faith and gaining faith, and an illusion of faith. And is it really real? Who are you worshipping? Why are you so pious? Do you even know where this? So just again, a fascinating chapter. On the surface of it, you would read this and think, I'm supposed to feel really angry for these people that their gods are being burned. But when you think about it from a different perspective of, maybe this is a manufactured religion, and they're not worshipping anything. They're not worshipping, well, or at least they're not worshipping what they think they're worshipping. Yeah, so I really, really, really enjoyed this chapter.
Yeah.
And for me, it just linked back to, there's something about that description of the wall and the light going through the ice and this rainbow effect and the different moods. And yeah, there's something about it.
I really like this chapter as well. I feel like, because again, George has given us, like, Davos sounds so different to everybody else as well. You know, he's such a he has his own unique voice and his own unique way of thinking, very family orientated, very loyal. And just as you were saying there about Salador San and the Azor Ahai, the Nissa Nissa prophecy, I guess. Like, it strikes me sometimes, I'm strange anyway. But sometimes, you know, when you're entering in your date of birth, and sometimes I'll click like the year, like I'll put myself in a year younger, and I go, oh no, it's this year. Like I'll get my year wrong. And then I always have these mad, like, waking fantasies of, like, well, if I'm part of a simulation, maybe in one part of the simulation I was that year, and like all this kind of thing. Like, I feel sometimes when you hear these stories in the series, like, it sounds like it might be a bit of a glitch in the matrix, or a glitch in the simulation, where, you know, the story gets transferred in different ways around, like what you're saying with the religion idea as well. But the old Nan story in Arya's last chapter, with the guy in the room full of giants, and then he goes out and bleeds his blood.
The others take him.
That could be a Nissa Nissa story as well. It could be a gendered swapped Nissa Nissa story. I mean, there could still be a Nissa Nissa type event at the end that does require some sort of sacrifice, and there might even be a gender swap at the end. I don't know, but or it might not be. It might be the love of a sibling, not the love of a lover, or the love of a child, even like a Abraham type thing. But it's one of those things that when you hear them, you feel like the character isn't fully taken in the enormity of that. Obviously we are, but that they're not taking it. I like the pirate, and I like the fact that we're going to see more regular folk through Davos as well. We'll get the highborn and the lowborn with Davos. So But so that's it for me, unless you have any other.
No, that's it for this week. So I don't know what chapters we've got.
So next week we have our first Theon chapter. The last of the new characters, I guess, to be introduced in Clash. We also have our first Dany chapter, and I think that's everybody then covered. And we're going from Theon 1 to Bran 2, so that's chapter 11 to chapter 16. And thank you to Sunny and Ion, and who else was here? AU is here, and
Goodbye, girl.
Of course. Thank you for all your input. Thanks to everybody watching later. Let us know in the chat if you have any, or let us know in the comments if you have any questions or anything like that. Thank you very much, Claire.
You're welcome. No, I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm really excited about
now.
that. Me too. Me too. Yeah, definitely. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.